All right, but for most folks, the brushes should be live. You can grab them. And this is the Spring 2020 brush update. And I wanted to just walk through some of these brushes with you. And if you have any questions, I can check the chat and see what's up. Hugs from Brazil. Hey, Tate, that's very kind. Hugs right back to you. Children's Book Illustrator. Excited to check out the spring brushes and also for when the summer ones are available. Yes, the summer brushes should be available in North America in early June and then worldwide by early July. And I'll definitely be doing a preview of those as we get closer to that date. All right, so let's take a look at these spring brushes. There are a bunch of them to go through. And because it's spring, I wanted a few of them to have a little bit of a spring theme to them. So this is the Bouquet Brush. And the Bouquet Brush allows you to paint these flowery shapes that have a little bit of color dynamics built into them. I'll select a nice pink color here and just go to town with that, and you can see what that does. So these are really fun for backgrounds, really fun for just doing random painting of flowery shapes like so. Go ahead and switch the color out, you'll notice that you also get a little bit of that transparency coming through, which is lovely. And these work in both Photoshop and Fresco, I should say. All of the brushes in this brush set are compatible with both apps. So if you're a CC subscriber, go ahead and grab these and put them into Fresco and see what happens, because you'll enjoy painting with them just like you do in PS, which is short for Photoshop. So that's the Bouquet Brush right there. There is a variant of it right here, Bouquet 2. And Bouquet 2 is a little bolder. It's not going to have as much transparency. It's also a little bit larger, so you can really get these lovely shapes like that. And because of dual brush and texture and all the random elements that I've incorporated into the brush settings, you're never going to get one stamped look exactly like the last, which is just a really nice thing. You're not going to get that repetitive look that you get with a lot of brushes. Really good randomization going on here. All right, moving on, we have the Cube City Control Brush. So this is one that I thought would be really handy for people who want to do a lot of texture in their work, but also people who do comics and wanted to have something that would represent sort of a cityscape or any kind of a tech kind of a look. And what it is, there you go, cubes. And once again, this is taking advantage of color dynamics and size jitter and some other lovely things. Now, in some instances, you're going to have control, and so that's why it's called Cube City Control, because with the pen pressure, using a little bit of pressure, I get smaller cubes and they're tighter together. Now, as I use more pressure, not only do they get larger, but they also scatter wider. So lots of cool pixel art to be made with these, lots of background stuff. You're doing a cityscape, for example, and let's imagine that the background is dark and you want to show that there are all these windows that are lit up at night. You know, you just do this. You can increase the spacing, of course, with your brush. So randomly generate cubes that are farther away from one another, like this, okay? And there's your cityscape, just like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with this one, and there are variants of it as well. So for example, we have the Cube City Fuzzy. Now Cube City Fuzzy has a little bit of texture built in, you can see that. And that's really quite nice as well. Add a little different color there, lighten that up. You can see what you can do, much more subtle effects for that. And then regular old Cube City just goes totally nuts with really enormous cubes. Now I'm zoomed way out, by the way. Let me give 100% there, you can see, because this brush is 1023 pixels in size. So all the brushes in this set are designed to work really high res, so you never have to worry about pixelization with your brush strokes if you're going to work on a large file. All right. So the Peel Brush, this is an interesting one. I'll show you what this looks like. Again, really nice texture with this. This came out of my experiments with trying to capture some of the vine charcoal, willow charcoal kind of a look for a brush. So you can see that what you can do here is do these soft textural backgrounds, and I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is to fill an entire canvas with this. All right, just go up and down and up and down, and you're still going to get that nice variation right there. You can go all the way to black, right, if you just apply more pressure and pass over an area several times. So what you're basically getting is this sort of charcoal graphite kind of a fill for an area. And that's good for shading, it's good for all kinds of effects. Use it in combination with some of the pencils, for example in the Mega Pack, to get some interesting effects as well. Nice to paint inside of a selection with these, so I can make a selection and then just do that, right? Really lovely. Go over that with another selection and then grab another color and do something like that. So very cool for collage-y kind of style, shape-based images and so on. Check the chat here and see how we're doing. Did we get new brushes in the latest update? Yes, that's exactly what we're talking about here. This is the spring brush update. These were released in North America about middle of March, I believe. Now they're rolled out, hopefully worldwide. And as I mentioned up front earlier, there are some issues with some people trying to download them in England, and also I think I got a note from somebody in Italy. And what I said you can do is you can, at the bottom of the brush download page, change the region to the United States, and you should be able to grab the brushes. And if that's not the case, don't worry. They should all be live by this weekend. We're coming to you here April, what is it, the 23rd, I believe. I'm looking at my calendar, trying to find some information. Yeah, today's April 23rd. Sorry, we're all in the same boat together with this coronavirus situation where we're all losing track of what day it is, so forgive me for that. Alrighty, moving on. This is the Braque brush. So Georges Braque, the painter, some cubist stuff going on in his work, and so I decided, what the heck, I'll make a cubist style brush. This is a big one as well as a 700 pixel brush. So I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see what this is doing. Fantastic for these weird backgrounds like this, kind of like a crystalline sort of a shape, right? Going on. So crystallize that canvas, boom, boom, boom. Color dynamics in play as usual, so you can see what's happening there. And they're really subtle, so you can get some pretty nice effects. Use it for backgrounds, use it for who knows what else. I don't know, maybe you're going to do Superman and his Fortress of Solitude, and you just want to throw in some icy shapes right there, right? Some blue. So look, I'll just go like this, right? Get a nice base in there, darken it up a little bit. Da, 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 da. There, now I'm in this Fortress of Solitude kind of environment for soups, right? Maybe add some white and just pop that in here and there. See how fast that is? That is a fun brush right there, folks. Alrighty, the Free Flow brush. Well, this is a really nice one for inking. I really like this brush for inks. And it's, again, really large, 200 pixels we're talking. So this is a big one, right? So what you do is, if you want to do some inking, what you do is just size it on down, put it down to like 70 pixels, something in that vicinity, right? And then, wow, look at that. Free Flow, that's the name, right? Now, the way you control the texture, like you're seeing there, is with tilt, right? So more tilt means more dry brush. If I come more vertical, I'm going to get lines that are a little bit less textured. All right, but I love the variation you can get with this brush, like that. Just all kinds of different marks you can make. Really fun for inking. What you can also do is you can go to your brush settings, turn on scatter, and increase the brush stamp from 1 to 2, and that'll also darken it up if you're looking for a more solid line. All right, so for the inkers out there, that's the Free Flow brush. Try saying that 10 times fast. Free Flow brush. No thanks. All right, the Bosch brush. Well, here's an interesting one. So this one's got a lot of texture to it, but you can do a combination of things. And I actually demoed this brush once in a Fresco live stream because it's got so much potential for making different kinds of marks with one tool. So I can do line work with it, right? Say I'm doing sort of like this side of a house or something out in the countryside. All right. And then look at this. If I use more pressure and tilt, all right, I can do the landscape right next to it, just like that. So same brush, right? Very different effects with this brush. Same brush, different effects. And I'm just using pressure and tilt to control this. So I'll just fill in a little bit of darkness inside that door there. But yeah, with the pressure and the tilt of the stylus, I'm able to create all these different marks with this same brush. I want to add some texture there under that roof. Okay, so that is the Bosch brush. It has a lot of different uses. I'll zoom in again so you can see how that texture all looks. Let me know if the resolution is okay on this stream, by the way. I'm going to check the chat and see if anybody says anything about that, because I want to make sure it's nice and crisp and sharp. It's looking sharp on my end, but want to make sure it's okay on your end. Is it children's book illustrator? Sorry, I don't understand the comment. Alrighty. Okay, moving on. So let's check out what we have next. This is the Willow Fat Brush. So again, trying to work with willow charcoal, trying to get that softer charcoal look. So I like this one for shading. Again, using it in combination with one of the Megapack pencils. It's just a really nice tool for getting some of that willowy charcoal look. And for those who are curious about this kind of tool, I've got a whole batch of willow and vine charcoal looking brushes that I've been working on for the last couple of months. Those are coming out really soon, and I think you're going to love them. Alrighty. Now, let's see. This is the Stain Monster. Well, as you can imagine, this is a staining brush. You can see what that does. So really nice watery stains and some droplets and whatnot. Use this again for watercolory effects. It's got a little bit of pressure sensitivity, so that with light pressure I'm not going to cover as much of the canvas, and it's going to be more transparency with the marks that I make. Heavier pressure is going to make the marks a little darker and eventually build up to a solid. Now with this one, what's nice you can do is add the color dynamics and pump the hue jitter up a lot higher, so something like maybe a 14. Alright, then if I select a color and start painting with it, you'll see that I'm going to get this nice color variation in the stain, right? So that's a really fun thing to do. Don't forget about using those color dynamics whenever you really want to push things to a really cool look like that. And that leads us to the Splish Splash brush. Well, again, you can probably guess what this is. Now the way Splish Splash works is with the tilt of the stylus. So if I move my wrist and I tilt my stylus, okay, you can see what's happening. The brush stamp is actually tilting and changing orientation depending on what I'm doing with the stylus, right? So I can do this. I can do a nice circular splash, go in a circular direction like so, and really control what's happening with the directional movement of this splash that I'm painting. All right, so for this brush, and again, by the way, this is a pretty large brush. This is 400 pixels, but the original stamp that I used to create this was about 800 or 900, so you can size this up. I'm making it 700 pixels now, and I'm still going to get a nice sharp look to what I paint. All right, that's a really fun brush. There are several variations of this. Okay, we have Splish Splash 2. Now this one has wet edges turned on, so you're going to get this cool overlay effect every time you paint a new stroke, right? And you're also going to get darker edges to every shape that you put down. Hopefully you can see that when I zoom in. Really good water effects for this brush. If you look at my Instagram feed, you'll see a painting I did of a surfer using just the Splish Splash brush for all the water, and then a little drawing of the surfer on top. And then finally we have this Splish Splash variant, which is a really sharp version of the brush, okay? And there you go. Now, not only does the tilt control the direction, but the tilt also controls the size of it. So as I tilt away from vertical, I'm going to get a wider splash, okay? If I go more vertical, I'm going to get a splash that is not as wide, okay? So it's more of a round kind of splishy splashy mark. So lots and lots of things you can do with that. Sweetheart Inker. Well, the Sweetheart Inker is, of course, an inking tool. Really nice for drawing. So for all those inkers out there, this is very similar, I would say, to my Mr. Natural brush. If I move away from a vertical, from the tilt of my stylus, moving more horizontally, right, to line up parallel with the surface of the Wacom tablet I'm using here, I'm going to get more of a dry brush look. The line is going to break apart a little bit more, right? If I go more to vertical or perpendicular to the surface, it's going to be a nice solid line like that. And there are always going to be some nice irregularities to the outside of the line that you're drawing. All right, you can see that very nicely. Let's see, it looks really sharp. Good, thanks. I'm glad that it looks good on the screen that you're seeing. Let's see. Oh, someone's asking, where do you get the brushes? How do you load them? Good question. Here you go. Look, in my brushes panel here, you can all see this. I'm going to tap on this little menu here at the top right corner. Some people call that a hamburger menu. Scroll down here and you see Get More Brushes, and that's what you tap on. When you see Get More Brushes, it'll take you to the download page. You sign in with your CC credentials, and boom, you've got over 1,700, 1,800 brushes at your disposal. Grab them all, play with them, enjoy them. Alrighty. But yeah, so for the comics folks out there and for anybody else who likes to ink in Photoshop, the Sweetheart Inker is a sweetheart of a brush, and it's going to give you some really nice lines, and I think you'll enjoy it. There you go. Little head. Simple as that. Okie dokie. Alright, moving on. We have the Mushy Brush. I did some really nice studies with this brush actually in Fresco a little while back. I was just playing around with it. So it's kind of a wet brush, and the Mushy Brush takes advantage of color dynamics for foreground and background color, which is really cool. And what that means is if I have a foreground color, let's say of a blue, and a background color of like a pink, alrighty, then what it's going to do is with more pressure, it's going to use that foreground color more. With less pressure, it's going to use more of the background color. And with medium pressure, it's going to kind of blend the two together. So you're going to get this kind of purple color, right? So if I use more pressure, more blue, and then less pressure is going to move more toward the pink. And because there's transparency tied to pressure, I'll never actually get to that pink color because it's eventually going to go to nothing or transparent, fully transparent. But if I switch my foreground and background colors, reverse them, right, now I'm going to use more of the pink when I use more pressure. Okay, so with this brush, I like to do straight up watercolor work and just do washy kind of stuff like this. Just like fill in a shape, fill in an area, and just look at all the variety that I get in that single brush stroke, right? That's really pretty. Good texture, the edges are really, really cool. We get that wet edge effect here and there. I like to overlay these because the brush setting for multiply is the default for this one. If you don't want that, you can always come up here, turn that back to normal, right? And you're gonna get less of that transparency, and the more you paint, it's eventually gonna go to solid, all right? Go ahead and reverse. So now I'm painting more with white in the foreground, right? Really, really fun to play around with this and see what you get. Lots of very natural looking brush strokes. The Washy Warren, named after my dad, his name. This is a fun one. So this is another watercolor brush, but it uses a new texture that I made, and I like to just let that reveal itself as I go and paint. Okay, so for those of you who like the watercolor effects and the real watercolor brush set, this one's for you. Also could just be fun for coloring stuff in, right? Remember, as I showed earlier, it's really fun to work inside of a shape, you know, make a shape, and then take these brushes that have a lot of texture to them and all these other interesting variations and paint inside the shape. That's just really rewarding to me. I love having those hard edges, but then having all that textural stuff happening on the inside. That's really fun. Go ahead and like chop it up and do cool stuff with it. And paint on top of that. Start to do some really modern, abstract, fun stuff, right? Alrighty. So what do we have next? We have the Washy Warren detail. Same brush, nice detail work, right? This could even be really good for drawing, couldn't it? So I like that one. Let's see what you can do with this. Kind of a little bit more haphazard, random kind of stuff happening with the line, but still enough control for you to figure it out and make a nice looking piece of art. All right. Well, we're getting towards the bottom of the list here. This is the Chapped Inker, excuse me. Chapped Inker, again, good inking tool. It'll break the line apart here and there. It's totally random. And for those of you who like that 1950s, 1960s golden age era advertising illustration, I think for sure this one will help you out to achieve that look, right? It's just got that look that we're familiar with where the line breaks apart here and there. I love to draw with this. It's just one of my favorite things. I don't know exactly what I'm going to get with the line, but I know that it's going to be having that natural media look with the inks that I just love. So I don't know who this guy is, but he looks upset about something, right? Turn it on its side, you'll get a little bit more dry brush like that. And there you go. So that's a fun one. That is the Chapped Inker. Alrighty, granola. Well, as you can probably guess, granola looks like granola. So let's check that out. Ooh, yep, another texture brush. All kinds of uses for this. Who knows what you could do with it, right? You need some area where you're going to do a lot of dotty stuff. Maybe it's foliage. Maybe in the background you got to paint some foliage. You need to quickly just suggest some leaves in the trees back there, right? Why not? Simple as this. Look at that. There's some foliage, leaves in a tree. There are some variants of this. We have the granola variant that has a softer look to it, okay, and more variation in the opacity with every brush stroke. And then there's also the granola color. This one takes advantage of color dynamics. Now you can always increase that, as I showed you earlier, bump that up to like a 10 or something along those lines. And now when I paint with it, I'm going to get more. Let's use something like a blue so you can get a lot more variation here. So you're going to see some greens in there, some blues in there. Go ahead and mess with the brightness jitter. You get a whole other situation going. Look at that. Really, really fun. Maybe you want to use this for someone's hair, right? If they've got more curly hair, go to a darker color like this. And using lighter pressure, I'm going to get a smaller stamp, right? So just do this, take my lasso tool and cut away a little bit right here. Come in, there's our hairline. There's an ear. Go back to that Washy brush, something like that. Make it a little smaller, and then we can just do this. And now we have a nice face with some cool hair right there. I can fill in some of those areas with that brush too. It's fun. I never run out of ideas for using these things. Alrighty, the Underbrush. This is a really cool one for backgrounds, alright? So you got to do a quick forest floor or something, or you want to do some kind of a cool impressionist thing. Look at this. It's like Jackson Pollock all over the place. What a mess. This is a huge brush, by the way, 814 pixels, but it's actually scattering out to about 2,000 pixels when you paint with it. Using color dynamics as well, so lots of cool stuff you can do with that. Saber tooth. This is a painting brush. This is all about painting, all right? And I just love the way this one feels. It's like you've got just enough paint on the brush to cover a little bit of space, and then eventually it starts to just kind of break apart on you. Maybe the bristles are all kind of ratty. And there are variations of this as well. There's a Sabertooth CD. This is a color dynamics brush. So I need to check the chat here, make sure there are no questions. Will you one day bring the impasto to Photoshop? I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, now that Fresco has real oils that actually do that automatically, I'm not so sure about whether in Photoshop we'd want to make that a downloadable set, just because it requires so much instruction and so much work to explain how it works, since it's a set of actions in combination with styles and so on. But I have had a few requests for that, so it's something to consider, and thank you for that. So I'll consider it. I think it might be a fun thing to do. On the other hand, without giving too much information away, obviously we're working on painting and drawing in Photoshop right now and constantly improving that experience. So there might be some things coming on down the road, maybe that would negate the need for anyone to use that. So we'll see. Alrighty. The Sabertooth CD works like the other color dynamics brushes that take advantage of foreground and background color. So if I just use my background color as a color like this, I've got yellow and red. Now when I use this brush, I'm getting an orange when I'm using medium pressure. Heavy pressure gives me the yellow. Light pressure gives me that red. So anything in between gives me the ability to make these brush strokes that feel really natural, because I just vary the pressure as I go back and forth. And what you wind up getting is this cool effect of there being multiple colors in the same stroke, right? And that's really, really cool. And same thing you can do with the Sabertooth wet brush. Okay, the Sabertooth wet brush is one color with the foreground and background is different. So as I pass over an area here, you can see what's happening. It's changing that color very subtly as I go back and forth. And it's using those wet edges. So this again is a very painterly kind of a brush with some really interesting effects that are possible. And we got the Chisel 2020. All right, so here's the Chisel brush. This is another inking brush, but it's similar to the other chisel brushes I've made, except that in this case, I have a lot more of a dry brush or rougher brush effect than the other chisel brushes I've made. And it's going to respond to the rotation of your hand or the tilt of the stylus. Okay? So for you letterers out there, or people who just like to ink with a chisel brush, you know, this is a pretty good option. There you go. That's what that looks like up close. I've zoomed in at 100% right now. Yeah, there's a good variety of inking brushes in this brush set. I like how it breaks apart, like right there. That's a cool effect, and I think you'll enjoy that one. Scrappy Canvas, another kind of impressionistic brush. So let's take a look at this one. This is for oil painting on canvas. It's called Scrappy Canvas because the brush strokes that you make are going to be a total mess. Very subtle color dynamics in play with this brush, which makes it easy for me to take one area and blend it with another by using light pressure and then painting over it. I'm holding down the Option key to temporarily pull up my, or call up my eyedropper tool. So I can sample the color, I can paint, I can sample the color over here, I can paint. Let's imagine I had some other colors off here to the side. Option key, grab that color, paint over here, right? Blend these two areas by just using light pressure, because the pressure is tied to opacity. So that's a really fun brush to use for nice, loosey-goosey, impressionistic painting. And that is the Scrappy Canvas. Pine Needler, this is another one you could use for lots of different things. You could actually use it for inking, all right? And you might not think so by looking at it, but all you have to do is size it down. So I've got it about like 35 pixels now, right? I can do this nice rough ink kind of a look right here. But at its original size, it's 100 pixels, and it's good for this kind of a thing here. I'm just gonna blow this up so you can see full size. Great textural detail brush, in addition to a brush that you could use for special effects, right? So let's say you're doing an animal or something and you want to add some fur, right? Or some hair. Look at that. You just add that right there. Boom, boom, boom. Other detailing work you could do, such as textures on a building and so on. Lots of different cool stuff. Inky Shredder. Well, as you can imagine, another cool inking tool. Let's take a look at this one. Now, as I draw, you're going to see what happens is not only does the line break apart, but occasionally you get these little dots that just kind of show up with this one. So really, really fun to draw with it. And you're not going to know exactly what you're going to get until after you draw that line. You do, however, control the width of the brush with the stylus pressure. So nice fine line like this. And then really heavy line like that, and everything in between, right? So pretty wide variety of sizes you can do with just that one brush using pressure, not having to resize the brush or anything like that manually. You know I love the inkers, folks. And that leaves us with the Trusty Rusty. So the Trusty Rusty is the last of the inkers right here. And this one, again, based on the Mr. Natural brush that was a really big popular one in the Mega Pack ink box. The difference being that with this brush, I get a slightly more crisp look to the lines that I draw. It's not quite as soft as Mr. Natural. And really a good one for comics artists who like the thick and the thin, like this, but also want to be able to have a little bit of variety on the edges of the brush stroke and never want it to get soft or for the opacity to dip below 100% black, right? So you're never going to have that happen with this brush. It's black or nothing, right? Or 100% of the opacity of whatever color you're drawing with. Really good control. It's very snappy, so I can do stuff like this where I can snap my hand away, and look at that taper you get. Really lovely. Taper is a thing that's a little harder to get sometimes with Photoshop inking, but with this brush, you are set. And folks, that wraps it up. Those are the brushes. That's the Spring 2020, pardon me, the Spring 2020 brush update. It's live right now in North America, should be live everywhere else by this weekend. And let me know what you think about the brushes. You can always hit me up on Twitter at Kyle T. Webster. More brushes are coming in the summer. Like I said, that's just a couple months from now. And those are going to be really fun. And I'll show you a preview of those brushes in about a month so you see what's coming down the line for those. I'll check the chat one more time and see what's up. Love to see a class on how to make brushes like these. That's a good idea. I should do a brush class sometime. I like that idea. Nice brushes so far. Greetings from Macedonia. Hello to you too. Replay of this. Yes, I think a replay of this will be live. I don't see why not. I haven't changed the settings or anything. So what else can I say? Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I hope you all are staying safe and healthy and well. And I'll catch you all around next time. And that's it for me for now.